Good morning, everyone. It is Saturday, which means it's time for another Salty Saturday stream. And we're back after a week off. Unfortunately, I had to do some traveling, and Vader wasn't feeling very well. So we took last week off, and we've got 2 episodes of the Rings of Power to cover in this jam-packed edition of Salty Saturdays. So we're going to get right to it. And I'm going to introduce my fantastic panel of nerds right after I remind you that if you want to help support the show and you like what we do here, be sure to drop us super chats because we will stop the entire show just to feature them. Anyway, we're back with our fantastic panel of regulars. Matt Vader 74, how you doing, buddy?
We're here talking about this show. It's going to be fantastic. Can't wait. I'm super excited.
You sound excited.
Yeah,
he does.
Yeah, for the world's coldest volcanoes, it's going to be awesome.
And Brian from the Popcast is back with us today. How you doing, buddy?
We're here. We're queer. We're ready to party.
Wow.
Let's go.
Dang, dude.
I don't remember agreeing to that.
Flip that, boys.
I know, right? I feel like that came out of nowhere.
Jesus.
That's cool. We're very inclusive here.
Start the party off right.
Yeah, I'm like, speaking of queer, Odin from Odin Movie Blog. He's with us.
Well, hello.
Oh,
How's
hello.
it going? Glad to be back.
Good to see you.
Odin, thank you for returning, even though, Brian kind of outed you right there from the closet.
I know, right? It's going to be such a controversy. So much red tape now that I'm gonna have to go through just to get my street cred back. So
I want to lick your bald head.
I have a rosary. Oh, it slid away. I have a rosary right there. There we go. My cred is back.
Now that we're queer, we might actually get featured on Twitter and YouTube a lot more now.
There you go.
Yeah.
Time to get some inside access.
Yes.
I gotta go. I'm out.
Yes. And novelist extraordinaire and doctor, Mr. Huffman. How you doing, buddy?
You literally just said doctor.
Yes.
And then
You called him Mister.
You're like Galadriel in episode 6, who says one thing and then immediately
Yeah.
contradicts herself.
I'm glad you got the joke. Yeah.
That's called foreshadowing.
Ooh,
Wow, that's a big word.
that's a fancy writing technique.
Yeah, it is.
Yes,
I'm a fancy
that is a
writer.
fancy writing technique. And I know that Huff has a lot to say about episode 6, so we're going to get right to it. But right before we do, I just want to shout out everyone who's currently in the chat. We got Anthony Mark, big fan of the podcast. Appreciate you being here, Anthony. Gavin Blackburn is here. Wayman 706, Dr. Farnsworth, and Joker Voice. Guys, thank you so much for being in the chat. We've got a lot to say about episodes 5 and 6, so let's get to it. So I've got a breakdown of episode 5. I'm just going to go through all the major plot points real quick, and then we'll go around the panel and get your guys' take on things. So in episode 5, the Harfoots go on their pilgrimage, seeming like months pass as they do so, and the Harfoot leadership is forced to take a detour where they talk about stranding the Brandyfoots, and the stranger uses his magic to protect them from wolves. And when the stranger tries healing himself, he ends up scaring Eleanor, who now doubts how good he is. And we get the appearance of the Slim Shady squad, who seem to be hunting the stranger. In the Southlands, half the humans defect over to Adar and his orcs, and Don Numenor convinces girl Boswin to stay and fight, and Theo reveals the evil sword to Don Numenor, who says it's a key that will be used to enslave humanity if it should fall into Adar's hands. Prince Durin visits the elves, and Elrond learns the origins of Mithril from King Gil-galad, and that their alliance with the dwarves is actually a cover so they can get enough mithril to armor every elf because the elves are dying, and now Prince Durin holds the fate of the elven race in his hands. Back in Numenor, Isildur tries getting into the Southland expedition, but his dad and friends are having none of it. Halbrand tells the queen the bad guys are heading towards the Watchtower in the Southlands, and it seems he sold out Galadriel for a guild membership, but Galadriel convinces him to come back to Middle-earth with them. She then goes on and trains a bunch of young Numenoreans in how to fight orcs, and Isildur accidentally helps Pharazon's son sabotage one of the ships, but turns it into his advantage to get on the expedition as a stable boy. So a lot happened in that episode, and we end with the Numenorian fleet sailing off towards Middle-earth. But I want to get your guys' take on it. Matt Vader, let's start with you. What did you think of episode 5 entitled Partings?
I forgot about all that stuff.
I know.
I did too.
The whole time I was like, oh, that's right. That was this episode.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
like I woke up this morning. I was like, "Crap! I don't remember anything that happened in episode 5."
I know.
So I had to go
It's like-
back and rewatch it.
I literally just saw your email. Like I knew there was a link in the email that you sent me like 3 days ago, and I went in there and I said, "Hey guys, we're going to be talking about episode 5," and I'm like, "Oh shit." So yeah, again, it's just more forgetful stuff that I feel like I've seen in other shows already, but done better, I guess. So
What do you think of this whole pilgrimage with the Harfoots, where it looks like they're like walking for months across the entire map,
2
and then
weeks.
they're like, "Oh, we should have taken those people's wheels and left them stranded."
Yeah, well, the Harfoots are jerks.
They really
the most-
are, aren't they?
They're evil little
We will wait for you.
pre-Gollum little turds, man. They're like they're just the worst of the worst people out there. Their little race was exiled for stinky feet and being jerks. That's why they don't hang out with anybody else in Middle Earth, because nobody else will have them around. So, yeah,
All
that's
right.
what I think.
They're like gremlins.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Brian, what did you think of episode 5 Partings, and what did you think of Galadriel teaching the young Numenoreans a thing or two about swordplay?
Galadriel. Yeah, she's obviously a crazy boss lady. She handles business, and she can fight like 6 armed guards.
Oh my God, she's
No
the
big
best.
deal. Yeah. I thought for a minute there was like, is this the 80s where like one person attacks at a time? Like, what's going on right here? Because one accidental, non-deflection, and she just gets her heads chopped off. They're using real swords. They got armor. So many times, like if she just like casually missed blocking a shot or a parry or dodging correctly, and well, there it goes, Middle Earth. We lost her. We lost Galadriel.
She has super elf reflexes.
Yeah.
That helps her, not get hit by swords and spears and arrows.
They should
Amazing.
explain what like her power set is, because she's clearly a superhero of some sort. So
She's
need to.
She's got a dexterity of 18 plus, probably like a 19. Right? So
Whatever it is, someone show us her D&D skill points, okay? Because
she's got like a 19 dexterity and like a 2 charisma.
2 charisma and 1 in wisdom. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't get it.
But how can you be that hot but have such a low charisma? I don't get
It's
it.
weird when she smiles, like her attractiveness actually fades somehow. It looks like she's gonna like murder you.
It's horrifying.
So when she was riding that horse, you were really just not impressed.
It was not. I was actually feared for my life.
All right, so Odin, since you have the grandfather of all the beards here, let's talk a little bit about what you thought of the dwarf and elf storyline, where we got the origins of Mithril. It was actually kind of interesting, I thought. But it turns out that Prince Durin holds the fate of the entire elven race in his hands. What did you think of episode 5 and that particular subplot?
Everything about what you just said is like it's like a wave crashing over me of reminding of how stupid it just really honestly was. Like when the lightning strikes the tree and all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, Mithril, it's get created from. It's just like that's just so freaking stupid. And then you add on to that just some of the conversational elements. I know that this is a clip that we now have on Friday Night Tights, but I'm pretty sure isn't this the episode where it was like, give me the meat and give it to me raw.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one.
It's like, oh my goodness, really?
And give it to me raw. You're like,
Someone actually wrote that line and thought,
Yeah.
oh, this is a clever line for a dwarf to say to an elf. It's like,
yeah. No one thought that was homoerotic whatsoever.
Give me the meat.
Well, we're here and we're queer, so yeah.
it all
Raw.
ties back together. Yes.
Yeah.
But also too, it's a reminder of just how none of this makes sense, even timeline. Like they can't even keep track of their own pacing within the actual show itself, because was it episode 4 where the tower gets magically built up like very, very quickly?
Oh yeah.
And so it's like all of a sudden now it seems like we're like back in like the present time that we were in. It's just everything is just so confusing, and it's sad because I actually like the actor who's playing. Is it Durin? Is it Lord Durin? Who's
Prince
the
Durin,
younger
yeah.
Prince Durin? I actually like the actor playing him, but it's also yet another reminder of just how they have decided to just split up all of the different races by actual like UK races and actual like that part of the world. You know, the Harfoots are still clearly Irish, the dwarves are still clearly Scottish, the elves are clearly English. I guess that makes the men and women Welsh, but I don't know a Welsh accent all that well. But it's just interesting how they have those dynamics played out.
It's not very inclusive, is it?
No.
Yeah,
I feel like there should be an American in there, you know?
there should. Well, they're the
Season
orcs.
2.
Oh, the orcs, you're right.
The
Yeah.
orcs are the Americans.
Yeah.
All right,
That's
Mark.
too
I know
close.
that you have a lot to say about the Harfoots. So
What?
give me the meat. Give it to me raw.
Oh,
What did you think of
gotta stop
episode
saying that.
5?
The Harfoots are terrifying, and I hope that we learn that the big twist for this show is that while we expect the Harfoots to end up turning into the hobbits, they actually turn into the goblins, because that would make so much more sense. They're horrifying, hideous people, and they don't. What Mavra, whatever her name is, the real gossipy, nasty one. It's like, I mean, this encapsulated the Harfoots, like the horror of the Harfoots to me. And the only thing that surprised me about this little scene is that Sadok was like, "Oh no," and not like, "Yeah, let's kill him." Okay, problem.
Let's kill him and eat him.
There are fewer mushrooms in this part of the forest that we haven't been to since last migration. My assumption is that this must be due to this comet man who is with
Comet
the people in the
man.
back. Yeah. Yeah. So here's my solution. Why don't we just murder this family? What's it gonna take? Someone turning into an orphan or a widow? What? You just talked about murdering an entire family, so we won't make any this was in the show. This was real.
Because there was less mushrooms in the forest.
Because there were fewer mushrooms in the forest. So clearly the problem is this mysterious stranger. So let's just take their wheels and leave them to die. And that whole Harfoot nonsense also. It was a bit of a scene that had this entire show has such a problem. I mean, I think besides The Last Jedi, you could use this show as a masterclass in what not to do when you're writing a story. When Nori runs up to the mysterious stranger, is like, "Everyone's talking about, I've never seen him take to a stranger like you before in the whole tribe." Why didn't we see that? Like, you just told us you have $60 million an episode.
Right.
Why wouldn't we have the gossipy, murderous Harfoot lady going back to, "Oh, the stranger's good. You saved me from the wolves with his super big Ryu move and his
Seriously.
power punch." Just 2 seconds of that. 2 seconds of that. That was what Peter Jackson would have done. But it's like they refuse to show us anything when they could just explain it away with a line of dialogue. And
They had to
They'll
spend that
spend 5
money.
minutes on a single shot for no
yeah.
reason.
Which leads me back to my thesis that becomes stronger with every episode, which is that this entire operation is actually a money laundering scheme.
Unless you can argue they spent 30 million of that 60 million on the sales at the very end of the episode, because those sales were beautiful.
Well,
and
can
it was
you
the most
imagine if
exciting
they-
part of the whole episode.
Can you imagine, Odin, if they had kept all 5 ships? And they probably blew up 2 ships out of the 5, so they only had to animate 3 of the sales.
Oh man.
Because that would have been the entire budget right there. That's $50 million.
Or what if they
right there.
blew it up because it cost more to have the effects of blowing a ship up versus having it exist?
There's a lot of
But
questions.
I don't know why anyone's
4D
complaining about the story.
chess right there.
It's clearly all in here. I mean, it's just got to be. This is the source material, right? It's all here, black and white.
Oh
I just opened up Harfoots right there.
I hate the Harfoots so bad.
Yeah.
They're terrible.
So I want to go around and just get everyone's kind of ranking of episode 5. Like what did you think of it overall, and then we'll get to episode 6. So Vader, give it a final thoughts. What was your opinion on episode 5?
Final thoughts. Harfoots are jerks. Things happen, and I'll give it a score of 3 out of 10 because it's just really stupid. Yeah.
Ryan, final thoughts on episode 5.
the Harfoots are murderous cannibals, apparently.
Murderous cannibals.
Yep. And Galadriel's a superhero. And that's where we're at.
All right, Odin, final thoughts on episode 5.
Well, at least there was some action in it, as I keep on mentioning, because it's the only thing I really have memory of in that episode, and that's those sales opening. It gives it some production value, at the very least, and it makes you think something's about to happen, and then it cuts to black. So I'm going to give it, instead of a D, I'm going to give it a D+.
Like Disney Plus, okay.
Exactly. It's worthy of being on Disney Plus. Yes.
Mark, final thoughts on episode 5.
It's like you're asking me to rate how good this pizza tastes, but you gave me paint. Like I can't answer the question. It's I just hate it so much. I hate it so much. I give it a 0. I give all of this a 0.
Oh.
So
No, I don't give all of this a 0. I think Elendil needs. There is some sort of reality where Elendil and that actor are in a show that's worthy of that character, and there are a couple more characters like that. I'll give it a 1.
Okay.
I'll give it a 1.
Respectable. A respectable number.
To everyone out there watching, Mark's Twitter account has great breakdowns of every episode of the show, so be sure to follow him on Twitter. I will say this: I thought
so angry about it.
Yeah, I thought that as bad as the Harfoot thing was, I liked the song at the beginning. I feel like they finally got a song right.
It wasn't a bad song.
Yeah.
Although
She has a nice voice too.
No, it's fine. Was that her? Was that her the whole time? Did they just like produce
I don't know.
afterwards?
And I don't really care.
Yeah, it's fine.
It sounded
like-
produced because I was listening for the transition, because normally when they cut away, that's normally when they transition to the studio version. But as I was listening, it sounded like the whole time it was the studio version.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did write my own
But,
song though. I posted it.
Oh, yeah?
I've been seeing the lyrics in the
Yeah.
All right, real quick before we move on to episode 6, we got a $10 super chat from Joker Voice. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. He's also one of our mods in chat. Pardon my ignorance, but isn't Galadriel magical? Where's her magic? Episode 5, those ships could never fit 100 men, crew, supplies, horses each. A TARDIS, bigger on the inside than the outside. Episode 6, Galadriel is why Mordor exists.
Yeah.
So I think she is, like, aren't all elves magical to a certain extent? Like, they don't use magic, but they're, like, made from, like, the light of the Eldar.
It's all kind of low key magic.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
like
not-
talking to horses and stuff.
Yeah, it's real subtle stuff. But in this, sometimes they have stuff that's just not subtle at all, like the lightsaber sword. That works
And
on
they
blood.
live forever too, right?
Yeah.
I don't think they live forever, right?
Oh, no, they're immortal, yeah.
Unless they die.
Unless you kill them.
Unless they're killed. But,
Yeah, they gotta get
they're-
killed.
Yeah, because they're from the light of the Eldar, they have immortality, and they're just kind of like the living embodiment of the god's light or something like that. And I think that there's like some low key magic that they can do. Like I know in Lord of the Rings, Galadriel changes into that terrifying image in front of Frodo when he like tempts her with the ring and stuff like that. But that
And
was
then
totally
also-
different.
Yeah, and there's also where Arwen is able to get the river to flow down. So
Yeah.
so.
Anyway, let's talk about Udun, which is episode 6, which is, I believe, Elvish for like the dark fire or burning or something like that. So we've got a lot to talk about with this episode, and I don't think any of it's good. Maybe a little bit.
Hey,
But I'm
pronoun
gonna
usage is in this.
Yeah. Oh, is it?
Mhm.
All right. So I want to put this to the panel. We'll go around and get everyone's thoughts on it. So Don Limonor lays a trap for Adar and his orcs at the watchtower because apparently the watchtower is held together by rope. At Vader 74. What did you think of this?
I don't know. That was the most well-conceived tower trap ever made. I guess they made the tower specifically so it would collapse on the inside of the courtyard when they built it thousands of years ago, right? So heck, I don't know. Amazing stuff. Yeah.
Brian, you know
Those
what gets me
elves,
about
they're super smart.
you know what gets me about shows like Game of Thrones and this show in particular is the military strategy that's employed. So instead of staying in a fortified position where there was like one long bridge that was kind of like funneling the enemy into like one choke point.
Yeah, a literal kill box, right? Yeah,
where those untrained villagers could have held off the orcs for untold number of days. They choose to abandon that position and go into a wide open village to make their last stand instead of continuing to run. And it looks like that village, if I remember correctly, is actually in enemy territory. Like they somehow passed the orc army and went back to their village instead of going further west and retreating from this overwhelming force. So none of this, Brian, just try to make this make sense for me.
Don't forget really quick, the village, they had to reinforce the bar because that was their keep.
Yeah.
They were going to treat the bar like it was their keep.
Yeah, the tavern was
after they
their
just
stronghold.
left an actual keep, like you said, with the pincher point, and the funneling in.
So, I was in the military, and military-wise, I wasn't like some kind of strategy person. But I know for a fact that when it comes to holding position, that was the perfect position to hold. That was as good as it gets. Small, narrow space, precarious pass, and you are in a nice fortified location, and all you have to do is just defend it until Numenor arrives. And you don't know
the
that
sun
Numenor
comes
has
up.
fast, right? Or the sun comes up, right? Or the sun comes up.
They literally had to last the night. They just had to last the night.
One night.
That's all.
Night. You lock the doors out. Make sure they can't pass the bridge for like 6 hours. And
they could have taken down the bridge. If you're going to destroy the tower, take down the bridge.
Or take down the bridge.
You know what
I
love about these types of discussions is that I'm already annoyed and kind of pissed off at this show, and you guys just make it that much better. Like, it's so dumb.
Yeah, it was really dumb.
What are they thinking? It is unbelievably dumb.
And then when they tried to set the second trap, oh god.
Wow. We'll get to that. Odin,
Mm-hmm.
how do you take down a stone tower with an arrow?
Well, you have to have the gift of foresight, and I suppose you could argue some elves have the gift of foresight, right? So maybe with his elvish eyes, he was able to see, oh, this was a tower built with stones and rope, and that was what was holding it together was the rope. And if we hit it just this way, I know as a fact, because the wind is right, it's going to fall over in this exact fashion. So I just love also too how everything in the show that they present to us that's supposed to be like cool and supposed to be like, oh, that was well thought out. It just again creates this bit of issue with the plot because you say, wait, if everything is already so well designed, then why is this being so like, why aren't you doing some of the other things we mentioned, like taking down the bridge or other things like it? I mean, if you can literally be able to have the foresight to have water become a volcano, then how is it that you can't have a village that is able to have the bridge just fall instead of the tower? I don't know. Yeah, it's just stupid.
Yeah, the dwarves built that watchtower, or not the dwarves, the elves built that watchtower in order to hold back, like enemies just like the ones that they're fighting in this episode.
Yeah.
And the idea that the humans spent all that time, I guess, chiseling out all the mortar that held that thing together. It's like you could have literally just done that to the bridge and cut off the access to that tower from the oncoming enemy instead of laying a trap for them that was just going to like temporarily set them back.
Is there a back door to the keep? Is there a road that leads out of the back of the keep?
Yeah, there is.
Are we sure about that?
We don't. Well, yeah. I don't think we see it, maybe, but
there's not just one entrance because the fortified entrance was facing the Southlands because that's what they were guarding against, and then they have another exit of the keep going to the west, and that's what the humans took when you saw the trap enact, and then suddenly they're on the east side of the keep.
Are you sure they didn't have to leave out the front and pass by the orc army and go, "Hey guys, what's up? We're gonna Go down to the village while you guys go attack keep.
Well, if they were going back to the village, they would have had to have done that, right? Which is why
they did go back to the village.
Yeah.
So how does the back door lead to the village when the village is out the front door?
Well, you see, the back road, it curves around and goes back into the front road at just the convenient spot that would have missed the orc army.
I mean,
yes.
the whole point of that watchtower is that it's in a cavern pass, so it's surrounded by mountains, right? So like you're not supposed to be able to get past the mountains on either side of it, right? So like if they returned to that village, which last they knew was infested by orcs, they would have had to have gone past the orc army to the east to get back to that village. But instead they left to the west and somehow climbed back over the mountains and went
the mountain range and circle back around through orc infested lands.
You're missing something, Matt. It's fast travel. They fast travel in the show.
It's fast
so
travel.
confused.
Yeah, as long as there's not an enemy nearby. So they got far enough from the tower that there's no enemy nearby, and then they're allowed to.
They save their game, and then
they save their game.
Reloaded.
Let's escape. Go to options.
and you see that
gameplay.
You see that multiple times. You see that with the Numenoreans. You see that later with Halbrand on the horse.
Yeah.
But so fast travel actually plays a big role in this.
Yeah,
and
we're going to talk about that. But Mark, what did you think of this trap? Because as a novelist, I know you and I have written novels before. Like, I actually bothered to sit down and think out battles and try to figure out, like, what makes logical sense and like how to overcome that and stuff like that. With this show, it just seemed like they were like, okay, we have to have these set pieces here. What's the stupidest, laziest way to do it?
Yep, I agree. And that's why I think it's frustrating to me on so many levels, because I've taken the time to try to think through like action reaction. If I want the orcs to be smart and scary, what would they do? Okay, now the humans have to react to that. What would they do? Here's the resources that I give them. And the thing is, these writers are making up all of this stuff. They can give anybody anything that they need to make the story happen, right? They can put them in any place they want. They can make it, but the decisions that they make are just so ridiculous. I mean, really, an elven tower, a watchtower, is held together with a bunch of rope and metal that has one strength point that if you break it, it collapses.
It's actually smart.
It's baffling.
It's like the self-destruct button,
What
it's
if
their
orcs
old
come here?
version.
I mean, they would have done it with, like I said, they would have done it with the bridge. Everyone here can come up with half a dozen ways to make that more compelling and make it make more sense. So when you're watching this, I feel like it's visual and it's just visual. You can't apply any thought to it.
I mean,
and
Tolkien
that's
even
why
gave
everything
them
feels wrong.
Tolkien even gave them a blueprint for a scenario like this with Helm's Deep.
Sure, which they're copying. They clearly have no shame about just straight up lifting from Tolkien. So just do it then. Just lift it and say, But whenever they try to come up with their own stuff, it's just so bafflingly bad, and it gets worse and worse the more you think about it.
Yeah.
And for a show like this, it's too much.
Too bad they didn't have access to a volcano. Because that would have been a trap.
You didn't watch
things that get guys. Speaking of things that get worse and worse, the more you think about them, and fast travel. The Numenoreans make it to Middle Earth in record time. I guess Numenor's just 90 miles off the coast of Middle Earth, and apparently you can sail right into the mountains of the Southlands and then ride into the Southlands in 2 days' time. What did you guys think of this? Because, it's funny. One of the screenwriters of this episode tweeted out something on his account on Twitter about how proud he was to have his name featured on this episode. And I tweeted back at him. I was like, serious question. Can you just figure out, can you explain the chronology of this show to me? Because, it seems like Numenor would be a month-long journey to Middle Earth at least. And they get there and then they have 2 days to get to the actual village where the battle's happening. But at the same time, it's like we've been seeing the Don Numenor story play out. And it feels like, when the orcs were showing up, it was like a day. Because when we last left them, Boss Barwin, or whoever the woman is, Girl Boswin. She's like, how long do we have until the orcs show up? And Don Numenor's like, could be days, could be hours. And that's where we left it. And so like the Numenoreans have to make it all the way from Numenor to Middle Earth and then sail up to that exact point within the span of like a few days at the most. So I wanted to get your guys' take on this. Like, why do you think this show has such a hard time keeping its chronology intact? Odin, let's start with you.
Well, I think it's just because they have the D&D method of writing, right? The Benioff and Weiss Game of Thrones method of writing, where that they kind of just forget, that something happened, and they just kind of forget how things work and how logic itself works, and so therefore it is pure, and they basically assume that their audience is stupid, and that the audience is just going to look at the visuals and say, "Ooh, that's pretty," and forget, it's so pretty, and then just forget the fact that, oh wait, that's right, they had to get from point A to point B, and wait a minute, how does time work in this universe? They're not really establishing that, because House of the Dragon is a great example. They always make it very much a point in every episode to tell you how much time has passed. Like one person has a line in the show that says, "Oh, it's been 10 years," or "Oh, it's been 2 months," or whatever. In this show, it's like, "Oh, this is supposed to be in real time," at least is the way it's being perceived, but none of it works if it's in real time. So yeah, I just think it's that they forget what they've written. So I think a writer writes 2 lines, and then as they get to their 3rd line, they've already forgotten. And so they're like, well, I got to do this next. And then they don't want to connect line 2 and 3.
Yeah. Mark, how does fast travel work in this universe of Rings of Power?
It's the only way to get around. It's how Tolkien would have wanted it. Tolkien was famous for obviously not paying attention to time or distance. He didn't like travel stuff, and so this is just keeping in the spirit of Tolkien. You know my thoughts about the Numenoreans making it to the Watchtower and the big scene where
we're going to get to that.
Okay, I'm going to wait for my giant rant until that's
all right. Brian, how long did it take to sail from Numenor to Middle Earth, and why didn't in a ship that small Galadriel meet Isildur sooner than their very last day on the ship?
Well, it took about $120 million of time. And I don't know about that whole scene with
do they employ fast travel just to save money on the budget?
They must, yeah. And it's so weird because every scene with the guy's name you just said and his
Isildur.
son. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I feel like they're always talking about this this episode. They're talking about their mother a lot. And at first it was like, that was weird. It sort of came out of nowhere. Not really necessary. And then it happened again. And then again. And I'm like, is she going to play a part in this show at some point? Is she going to be an important part of their relationship or something like that? No, it's not. In fact, I don't even know. I'm not even sure how they survive at the end of the episode. But we're wasting millions of dollars talking about nothing at all. Well, I don't get it.
Well, she's dead, and the sea is always right. So
and she drowned.
That's all you need.
Yeah. So
she can see the shore or whatever. And my brother was like, "I wonder how they even know where they're going when they get to shore." I'm like, "Well, she can see. She can see it."
Well, in the previous episode, Halbrand told them, "Last I remember, the orcs were headed towards this tower over here." And so that's where they were like, "Oh, that must be where like the bad guys are. So that's where we're going to go."
That's convenient that Sauron remembers. I mean, Halbrand remembers.
I have a question. Are there no other little villages in the Southlands other than this little piece of crap 5-building little stagecoach stop on the road where they're all hanging out at?
Nah.
How do they know where to go? I don't get it. I don't get it because
she can see the shore.
They can't. They can't possibly know. There is another village, and it's a day's walk because it's the one where everyone disappeared like flies.
Oh, that's right.
Is there no capital human city in the Southlands? I would think there would be like these little settlements scattered all over the place, and you got this army of Numenorean soldiers just galloping majestically, crazily
across open
through-
land.
across
Just
open
open
lands.
No,
and
no,
they have no
we're gonna get
idea
to
where
that.
they're going. It's
Yeah,
it's
we're gonna get to that.
I'm
Her
so
elvish eyes
lost.
can see all. All right.
It's so weird. Yeah.
Her eyes are at least an hour ahead of everyone's. So
Exactly. Like you
that.
think about Legolas, right? You think about that line from Lord of the Rings saying, "What do your elven eyes see? They're taking the hobbits to Isengard," and she can
Yeah.
do like 1,000 times that with hers.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Matt Vader, what did you
Yeah.
think of the really quick sea journey to Middle Earth?
Oh yeah, it was really quick. Yeah, it was it was like such a throwaway thing, right? They had to get some I don't even know why they even showed it to us, to be honest with you, so that they could have a little scene of a dipshit feeding his horse an apple and have his little queenie moment. I
He was
guess
so wasteful with that apple too.
I know you don't feed food to animals like that, for real. Come on.
Can I be real? I half expected Galadriel to be at the front of the ship. I forgot what it's called, the bow or whatever of the ship.
Yeah.
And be on a horse, just prepared.
Oh yeah. That'd be awesome.
Just on the horse, looking out.
No, now she's not as happy on the horse this time around. There was no
Right.
smiling this
Looked
time.
a little more angry.
Yeah.
That's for
I
sure.
mean, isn't this
Well-
supposed to be thousands of miles across the sea?
Yeah, Numenor is
Yes.
supposed to be like really far from the mainland.
Really far away. Yeah, it's like a week away at least.
But
You know-
I guess because Galadriel could actually swim from one continent to the other,
This
Oh,
is
yeah.
true.
it's just faster on ship.
No problem.
Now I'm sure that they'll do a pitch meeting on this at some point when the whole thing's over, and the easy answer is just gonna be it's super easy, barely an inconvenience.
Barely an inconvenience, right?
Wow.
I love
Yeah,
that.
That's the only way you need.
You know, the map transitions, like they never give us any like kind of like ruler for scale or anything like that. So it could be anything you want it to be, I guess. All right, so let's talk about the Southlanders who return to their village, which appears to be back in enemy territory and was previously overrun by orcs. So of course it makes sense to go there. But they set a trap there instead of continuing to go on the run. And Don Limnor hides the evil sword where no one will ever find it after finally making out with Girl Bosswin. So Vader, this goes back to your point. Where is this village? Is it on the western side of the watchtower? Is it on the eastern side of the watchtower? If it's on the eastern side, which it is, how did they get back there? Or why did they go back into the orc-infested territory as opposed to running further west?
World's dumbest humans. I don't get it. I don't get it at all. It makes no sense why they would ever go back there and
It's their
fortify
town.
the bar. This is going to be our keep, and we have to save
Fortify
it at
a
all
village
costs.
that's
This is our
surrounded by
town.
open plain.
You know,
Yeah.
I think somebody in the chat mentioned it's like they took their cue from Shaun of the Dead, so they're going down to the bar. They're going to make their last stand at the
Winchester,
Winchester. Yeah. So it's very, very prominent.
All right,
Yeah.
Mark, what did you think of this little bit? Like, why couldn't they make this make sense? Like, why couldn't they just have them running to the west and eventually meet with the Numenoreans as opposed to hunkering down in a wide open village that they knew was an enemy territory and previously overrun with orcs?
Well, did you see Home Alone?
Yes,
Or did you like Home Alone?
I loved Home Alone.
Yeah, so that's your answer. It's a fun Home Alone sort of. Let's set some
Home Alone.
wacky traps. We're gonna set the wacky traps. Those guys will get it.
They should
I
have
like-
like a skinny, tall orc and a little short, fat orc.
You,
They should have ran in together and looked at each other like, oh or no, and then
you
fell.
lousy villagers! Iron fell right on my head. You got me. Oh, my foot! Ouch! You stabbed right through it. I don't know. I would love to get honest answers from all these screenwriters. Just to point by point, what were you guys thinking? What were you doing? Are you really just this bad? Were you just cheap?
It
Were
was probably they had the set for that village and they're like, well, we spent $1 billion on this. We need to use the set.
Yeah.
I feel like we have an entire writer's room and production staff that have been raised on nothing but reality television and network garbage, and none of them know how to actually, write a good television show. I think that's part of the problem. It's
well, considering the people who are show running this show,
too much The Bachelor and Survivor and Real World nonsense, and not enough drama and good writing. So
Odin, what's your take on this on this plot point? Like, logically, how can anyone make sense of this?
Well, there were two things from this like sequence of events. The first, because you had mentioned about Don Lemonless, the fact that he and the lady finally make out. And I couldn't help but think, because I watched it back I watched it twice, because as we were going through it last night on Friday Night Lights, I had not watched it all the way through because I just didn't have the time, because I couldn't. And so I was watching it, and then I watched it again after just to see like if I missed anything. And I was starting to pick up vibes of maybe Theo is the child of these two. Like, I don't know. Like, I was picking up those vibes of, oh, that would be a stupid plot point that they would kind of just add in randomly to say, oh yeah, by the way, this person is, this boy is half elf. And then getting to the actual traps being set, I love how they make it seem so smart. They're like, oh look, we got him trapped. And then the way in which they get through it, it's just this one orc who kicks this half-lit piece of wood that's blocking the path. And it's just like, oh, why were we just standing here freaking out this entire time, getting shot by arrows, when, oh, wait a minute, all I need to do is kick this little thing of wood that's blocking my path out of the way? Yeah. Fun stuff.
Yeah, the military strategy on display was not very well thought out.
No.
All right, Brian, I know that you have some family obligations you have to get to, so why don't you give us your take on this, your take overall on the episode, and where people can find you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I have to go to a funeral, and I don't have fast travel, so unfortunately. Every week I find myself bummed out that I have to watch this show, and if I'm just being real. If I wasn't reviewing it on here and on my channels, I wouldn't be watching it. I would have given up after like probably episode 3, to be honest. And it's just sort of boring. I don't look forward to it whatsoever. It's not even at the point where like Star Trek Discovery was something that I didn't enjoy at all. But every week I enjoyed how horrible it was. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I enjoyed watching it for how bad it was. This isn't even at the point where I can watch it, enjoy it for the salt. It's just really boring, and it's not at that stage of bad, but it's not good enough to watch. And I wouldn't be watching it if I wasn't reviewing it with everyone. That's just what it is. My haircut is. I got my haircut too.
So he's talking about Theo's haircut, which is basically like the reason he's half elf is because he has a bad haircut.
Yeah,
right,
covering his ears.
Yeah, I think it's because of the prosthetics. Like they can't. Like, it's weird too. Like they clearly spent an insane amount of money on the graphics for the show. It looks great, but there's so many other things that aren't well done. And my brother loved the orcs, but in my opinion, I think the orcs look a little goofy. And it's like they look the same. Like, and it's great. They look exactly like they did in Lord of the Rings. Okay, but it's been a long time. So I don't know. I'm not really a fan of the show. If we weren't reviewing it, I wouldn't be watching it. And even worse, when you review it, like you have to actually watch it. Like you were watching it and you're like writing notes. So I feel like I'm really into it, even though I couldn't care less.
What is this notes thing you speak of?
Oh, you don't write notes?
Hell no.
Come on. I write notes.
Vader barely shows up.
Yeah, I'm just. Yeah.
This is Vader's like.
No, I'm with you, dude. You kind of want to. I feel like you're like at the place we were at with Orville, but when I watched the Orville, I cut the cord. I said, I'm done. I'm not watching this thing anymore. So I get it. I feel your pain, man. I really do. And you're right. This show is not very good. It's kind of insulting, to be honest with you.
I can't wait until it's over and we're reviewing something that has either a ton of salt, so it's fun to watch for the salt, or it's actually good and we can watch it for the story. One of the two. Yeah. But like this in between thing is like the worst.
All right, Brian, where can people find you on the socials?
Multiple Popcast channels, but Popcast Prime and Popcast Live and Fantasy Unleashed for this kind of content. And then on Twitter, Podcast Guys, Facebook, Podcast Guys, Grinder, Podcast Guys. And that's it.
OnlyFans.
OnlyFans / Klingon Warrior.
Okay.
Let's be clear. That's not a podcast thing. That's specifically me. Shane won't be involved. He just takes the pictures.
All right. Well, Brian, thank you for being here and being queer. We appreciate you showing up every week. And have fun at the funeral.
I will have so much fun at the funeral. Later, boys.
See you, bud.
All right, later. Thanks for being here. All right, guys. So getting back to the episode. When the orcs arrive at night, the townsfolk slaughter them. But psych, turns out they were mostly the dumb humans that defected dressed as orcs. When the real orcs attack, the Southlanders get their butts handed to them because they have no defensible positions. And Theo magically knows where Don Limnor hid the evil sword, even though Don Limnor said no one can ever know where I hide this thing. And he hides it in the bar for some reason. And then Adar gets his hands on the evil sword, and it looks like all is lost. Odin, if you're going to hide something where no one can find it, why would you hide it in the place where everyone is hunkering down?
Well, I think that he had to have the logic of, let me put it in the most obvious place because that would make it the least obvious. You know, like people would expect him to find some clever little place to hide it, and so because they're assuming that hiding it in plain sight is just the safest way. Not to mention, of course, hiding it near the person who has a connection with it and could easily find it, even if it wasn't necessarily right next to him because of the corruptible nature of the actual item itself. And that's also another thing that seems to bring up some issues because elves, as we have seen established in much better properties adapting Tolkien, are able to sense evil. So the fact that he hasn't been able to sense it in such a way to realize just how much it needs to be like taken away, like truly distanced from people and not be this temptation for anyone, including most likely his son Theo, I think is just bewildering to me. It shows how dumb they have made so many of these characters, mostly male characters, by the way.
Yeah. Mark, how did Theo know where this super secret hiding place was?
Well, elves are notoriously slow-witted and dulcet, so it's very easy to just follow them as long as they've left a little bit, and then you can just kind of sneak behind them. As long as your sneak level is kind of raised up.
Mm.
Yeah, so you just sneak behind him, and then you can watch. I don't understand anything about it. I mean, he's an elf. You can't sneak around watching an elf hide things, really, but he did, so that means Arondir is kind of terrible at hiding things, which he obviously is anyway, because he hid it in the bar. Or the pub. The poob.
The poob. But
the Winchester.
If he's a half-elf, maybe that could explain it, but then there would be a problem earlier in the season when he sucked at hiding from the orcs. Not nearly as dainty.
He's not very good at hiding. That's
Well,
it. He's not very sneaky. I think
Terrible
that earlier scene definitely established that he was not sneaky. He was crumbing around like a cue ball on the walls of a pool table.
Well, there was absolutely no setup as to how he could possibly know where that sword was.
No.
And so, like, when he's like, I'll give it to you, like, at first I thought, oh, he's going to try to fake them out somehow. But no, like, he actually knew where the sword was hidden. And Don Limnor made a very big point to say, not even Girl Bosswin can know where I'm hiding this thing. I'm the only one who knows where it's going to be. And that's too much. And so, like, he fucked off. It looked like he went into the woods. But I guess, like, he went into the bar where everyone was already gathering to, like, hunker down, and just picked up a floorboard and popped it in there. Matt Vader, make this make sense for me.
I can't make it make sense. It's impossible. It's God dang, man. I don't know how to make it smart. I'm kind of slow-witted anyway. So asking me to make something make sense that is impossible. It's an impossible task. I can't do it. He literally just went into the bar, opened up the floorboard, and stuck it underneath the floorboard of the bar. It's silly. It's just another perfect example of these show writers and runners just having their heads up their ass. It's I don't get it. I don't get it at all. So, but I thought the battle was cool. I thought it was a kind of a fun battle. It was the best thing that they've had in this show so far. At least we got some sword and bow and arrow action.
Well, the battle part of it. So like this is the initial attack on the village, and so they create a firewall on the entrance to the village, and then they create a firewall on the exit. But then the orcs can't just go around it because there's nothing on either side of this village. It's just open fields. So it's like, how do they have them pegged in there? The military strategy at play in this thing is really dumb, especially considering the fact that girl Boswin couldn't get the initial torch to light before they could set the trap. So it's like you'd think that they'd have that ready, or something like that.
But those were just the dumb humans they trapped in a little fire fence. So
yes, that was the big reveal. It's like, we were fighting the jerks that defected on us. And then, once the real orcs show up, I want to talk a little bit about Don Limnor's fight with the boss orc. What did you guys think of that?
You mean Andre the Orc?
Andre the Orc,
yeah. That was he took a lot of blood to the face. I wasn't quite sure what was up with that. They really spent a lot of time and effort, and probably about $3 million of time to show that the black blood was flowing out of the dude's eyeball and into
his open mouth.
It was 40 seconds.
Yeah,
I count. I cut the clip.
Yeah, nice.
Instead of struggling with his mouth closed, he was just like.
I literally thought that they were trying to set up some kind of future thing where maybe he ingested this evil blood and it's going to start affecting his,
like an X-Files sort of thing,
like a zombie,
something, because they really spent some time on that and it was very strange, but whatever. I mean,
dark elf zombies. Yes.
It looked like Rey Mysterio fighting Andre the Giant. With armor and stuff on. That's kind of what I got. So yeah.
Mark, did you notice that whole fight was just set up to have girl Boswin come in and save the man?
Of course it was.
At the end.
She had to be on the side of her horse or upside down or some stupid ass stuff.
So what was funny is that big orc didn't have any weapons. Why didn't he have any weapons? If he had a weapon,
because these are weapons.
He's super strong.
Any weapon.
Because he's basic.
He had two guns.
I just, the whole thing was silly. He just bumps in, and I think they were doing kind of a Princess Bride, Wesley versus Fezzik thing for a couple of minutes, but then there was 40 seconds of eye socket blood squirting into Arendir's mouth. That's more than my house cost. That's how much they spent on that. At $1 million a minute.
Yeah.
Crazy.
People are going to want to see this. Let's do some more. Should we cut? No. It's only been 30 seconds.
Also,
2 more seconds.
I love when they try to establish the strength of any being that's superpowered, right? And so he's throwing Don Numenor just all around the place like it's nothing, but then he punches him in the face and it's not as destructive as it should be based off of the power that you've already given to this creature. It's like, wait, no. If he can throw this person the way that he's throwing him with this much force, a punch to the face should, actually spill some blood or, some break a nose or something to that effect. But no, none of it. And then, yeah, you're right. It's all about just the blood. And again, he keeps his mouth open for most of the time. And it's just, okay, I understand that you're struggling here, but you can maybe not try to consume the dark blood that could corrupt you, maybe. I don't know. Who knows?
Yes. It was very strange.
Mm-hmm.
So.
All right. So before we move on, we got a super chat from Dennis Wright for $4.99. Thank you, sir. Do you think Bezos likes this? He has no taste, or he does not care because he's swimming in his cash vault? Well, he's no longer involved with Amazon, if I remember correctly. He's retired from that company. So I guess he just doesn't care. He's Scrooge McDucking his.
He's building money. Giant yachts and putting them up rivers where he can't get them
space
out.
Penises.
Yeah.
Big old space penises.
So
with his new buddy William Shatner. Okay, so guys, this next scene.
He is the executive chairman still.
Oh, okay.
So.
Mr. Farnsworth points out Bezos equals Scrooge McDuck.
Actually, Vince McMahon, because he's a chairman. So
Ah, there you go.
Mm.
All right, so this next scene really bothered me when it appeared in the show. So basically, like all like the humans are kind of like captured by the orcs. It's still dark out, and then we cut to the Numenoreans at full horse race mode, as all of them are just like burning rubber, galloping through the fields. And the way it was shot, it looked like the sun was rising in the west because it looked like it was behind them. And I guess like the shot just wasn't clear that they were like riding into the sunrise in the west or in the east, towards the mountains or the village or whatever. But they were like in full daylight mode when they were riding. And then you cut back to the village and it's still dark out. And then when they go outside of the bar, it's just starting to be morning. So like I was like, okay, I know that they're setting up that the Numenoreans are gonna ride to the rescue, but it felt like they didn't do it right. And also, this was one of those things where it's like, why aren't they just marching? Like, how do they know the urgency with which they have to get there? And Mark, I think I told you, it's like this is a J.J. Abrams technique where basically, because the audience knows certain facts about the plot, the characters automatically know certain facts about the plot. And so like I hate this type of thing. You want to comment on your thoughts of this scene?
Oh yeah, I mean you probably saw on Twitter I posted the whole clip. This was the worst thing in the whole show. This was the absolute worst scene in the whole show, and that's ignoring the fast travel across the sea. They can't possibly know. Hold on.
All right, we're going to give Mark some time to deal with his family. Vader, what did you think of this scene?
We're talking about the Numenoreans galloping across the fields.
The race of fire across the fields.
Yeah, it was very majestic, right? It was very,
very
slow
motion.
Slow motion. It's very. We're gonna come rescue the people, and I think it was. I haven't gone back to verify, but I did hear that there was a lot of like really bad CGI involved with this thing, where like they were like duplicating some shots.
That was in the previous episode when Girl Bosswin was. I think
I heard it. I think it was in this horse clip too, but anyway, it doesn't matter. It's just it doesn't make any sense, man. Nothing about this stuff makes any sense. It's like I don't know. I have this image in my mind of the Benny Hill music playing, and they're just going from village to village. Is this the right village? Nope. Well, then they go back to another village. Is this the right one? They go to another one. No, is this the right one?
They cut to the map and it's got like they're
just like going all over
line of them like twirling around.
Yeah,
in the most roundabout way possible.
I don't get it. I don't get it at all. It's just, I mean, those kind of scenes are kind of cool and everything, but in the context of this, it's just everything is so wrong and bad with this show that it's just another thing. It makes you just kind of smash your head with your hand, you know. So I don't get it. So
it was cool in Two Towers because Gandalf knew what was going on, and he was going to find Éomer. He had a goal, and so when he shows up, no one's like, "Wait, what?" Everyone knew that's what he was doing, and so it's the big charge is heroic. These guys, ignoring the fact that they very explicitly said how long it would take to travel, and it hasn't been that long, they can't possibly know anything about the Southlands other than Halbrand, who is a known liar and thief, told them that there were some orcs there. So understand, this whole thing is based on him saying there are orcs there, and Galadriel being like, "Yeah, girl boss, I know that must be true. I love you." So they're riding at full speed. And it is exactly, it's a J.J. Abrams thing where you're just supposed to, well, I know this, so these guys must know it. They can't possibly know where they're going. They can't possibly know what's happening. They don't know the existence of this village. It could be the one a day's walk from that village. How many villages are there? The Southlands, surely it's as big as a state or European country, right? Even a small one. This is not like a town. I feel like it's a region. And so when they show this heroic shot of them galloping with the sun behind them in full armor at full speed, you stop and think about it and you're like, where are they going? They can't know where they're going. I understand that we're supposed to think that they're riding to save these guys. They've never met these people. They don't know what's happening. They don't know where they're going. So the whole thing just breaks down. It's like, you know, the painting of Christ that the kindly old villager painted over to look like a monkey.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of the metaphor for these screenwriters versus not even Tolkien, just Peter Jackson, right? Peter Jackson and the other two ladies who wrote Lord of the Rings. They saw what they did, and they are trying to do their version, but they don't have any talent. They don't have any ability. So it comes out looking like a ridiculous monkey person. And it functionally, it ruins it if you think about it at all. But they're trying really hard.
I try
So hard.
I'm doing things in my brain. It's like in my picture, in my head, I'm like, okay, got these 4 boats full of people, and they land on Venice Beach in Los Angeles. They unload, and then they run at a full gallop straight to Prim, 300 miles away.
Yeah.
You know,
Or Las Vegas.
or Las Vegas or something, because not knowing where the hell they're going. It just and they're there instantly over the course of an hour. It's just it makes no sense. No sense at all.
Speaking of this, Odin, so they know that they have to get to the watchtower, but we've established that the village is actually further east of the watchtower in enemy territory in the Southlands. So they would have had to have gotten to their destination and been like, "Oh, we have to keep going." Please make this make sense. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I wish I could. I wish I could,
Yeah,
because that's not the most disturbing part of this scene to me. What's the most disturbing part is that they've firmly established that Galadriel loves riding horses, makes her very happy, and yet there was no smile on her face that entire sequence. Not a single even smirk on her face. So boom, they've already broken the character development of that character. All right, that's the first problem. The second problem is, there were 4 ships? Is that the number that we're going with?
There were three ships.
Oh, 3 ships. Okay.
One of them got blown up.
That's right. And also, we actually got to see inside of one of those ships when you have the totally not Sauron feeding the horse his apple, and you're looking at it that's saying
Isildur.
Oh, sorry, Isildur.
That's the future
My bad.
king of humanity. Yeah.
My bad. Like I care about this show and who I'm even talking about in a moment. The fact is, we see the horses. So how in the world? Not only it's not even a problem of fitting people onto these boats. We've already seen where the horses are and how big these boats are, and there's no way you're fitting those many horses on those boats. So that's another problem, another big problem that I had with it. But even bigger than that, yeah, no smile on Galadriel. That's just it is sad. It is part of a development of a character that I just feel broken and betrayed by, and I demand justice. If she's not smiling next episode on a horse, then I want my money back, Amazon. So can't help you with the fast travel. So
let's talk a little bit about the fight when the Numenoreans arrive at the village. So they come in on a horseback, hot and heavy. You've got these guys who've never seen battle before going toe-to-toe with the orcs and kicking their butts, except for Isildur's one friend who's on the ground. He's like, "Help me, please. Oh, my God." And we also see Isildur's father kind of like get knocked off his horse, and he's taking on like 3 different orcs at the same time.
In his tiny armor.
And Galadriel's doing all sorts of ninja stuff on the top of her horse, avoiding arrows. And the queen is just kind of like up on the hill, and she turns to Isildur, and she's like, "Oh yeah, you can go fight them if you want."
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll stay right here.
Yeah, I'll stay here. And Hallbrand also, kind of flexes his muscles in this fight. What did you guys think of the initial arrival of the Numenoreans? Odin, we'll start with you.
Well, I first off appreciate the fact that they were like, okay, we need them to have white armor because the black blood of the orcs is going to show much better on brilliant white armor, for one. So I appreciated that fact. And also, in the entire ship ride there, and then, of course, in the midst of the battle itself, all I could think of was, why is the armor so small, at least seemingly on Isildur's father? Like, I remember looking at him saying, wait, you've worn other armor before that actually looked a lot more, like, protective of you. This looks less protective of you. And unless the mindset is, well, it needs to be lighter and smaller because they're going into battle, it's like, okay, then what is the purpose of the other armor in general? But These are just questions. They don't have to have answers, but they're questions nonetheless.
All right, Matt Vader, what did you think of this initial battle scene at the village?
I'm watching it right now, and I almost started laughing out loud because when Galadriel flipped over on her horse with her sword, and she's riding through and she cuts that dude's head off and stuff, and I'm just like, wow, it is so ridiculous, man. I mean, it's a cool battle scene and everything, and it's nice to see some actual battle going on in this show.
Mm-hmm.
But
I watched that bit a couple of times.
it's so crazy.
I think she hits him on a backswing, though. I think she passes and then swings behind. So
it's the weirdest.
Then they got the battle going on in the valley down in the little 4-building village, and then they pan up to the hill, and you got the useless ass queen sitting up there with enough people to fill up probably all 3 boats up there to protect her, right? I mean, there's at least 30 people up there on horses with her, and it's just.
Well, she's just a regent, you know.
Yeah, just the queen regent. She doesn't even matter.
I think we should also point out that in Tolkien, the Numenoreans weren't horse people.
No.
They were ships. They were a naval-based society, so like they didn't ride horses like they do in the show.
So that's how they were able to fit all the horses onto the boats, because they're masters of engineering and can somehow do that. Okay.
There might have been a cut scene where they make landfall and find a village of men who then sell them the horses. I mean, who knows?
I surprisingly, I actually kind of like the look of their armor. I know most of it's just fake t-shirt armor stuff underneath, plastic, but at least it doesn't look like it's super heavy, because I would think that horse soldiers would not wear full plate armor and weigh down the horse for this kind of combat tactics. But and there she goes flipping around underneath her horse again. I mean, it's just, she's very flippy and
very flippy.
Yeah, I don't get it, man.
And she's the one in plate armor. That's what's
so funny.
And plate. Plate armor is not.
Yeah,
and it's not elven plate armor. She doesn't have any. She showed up in her
They made it for her in Numenor, right?
Yeah.
I mean, she just showed up with it all of a sudden. She hasn't taken it off since.
Nope.
And
also,
there's the chase scene. I don't get the chase scene. Can we talk about the chase scene?
We're going to talk about that after we're done here. I want to hear Mark's thoughts on the battle. Moobs, yes.
Moobs.
No, I just it's more telling and not showing. Who's that? Galadriel. She's Galadriel. She's so good.
The commander of the Northern armies.
That's right.
She's so amazing.
That line.
But yeah, it was one of the least offensive things to me. It was kind of ruined because of all of my problems with them galloping at full speed to nowhere. Right. And so when they show up, I'm like, you lost me already. I think this entire situation is ridiculous and contrived and written by lazy hacks who just wanted spectacle and didn't bother to think of a single thing about how would this actually work? How can we make this? So I was already out of it, I guess, is what I'd say. I was already completely pulled out of any ability to invest myself in what was happening, because the whole thing was just farcical to me. But it's fine. But I do think the chase was. I have things to say about the chase.
So before we get to the next scene, we've got a super chat from E. Clay Thomason for $5. Thank you, sir. We really appreciate that. Is Bronwyn confirmed human? Her ears are always covered. Do you think she will be revealed as an elf or half elf? This could explain her son, maybe. No, she is definitely human.
Yeah.
She is a Southlander. They show her ears a couple times.
Yeah.
So she is definitely not an elf or a half elf. I think that I do think Theo is Don Lemanore's kid, because he just has too many fatherly scenes with him to do that, and his ears are always covered by his terrible haircut.
Yeah,
all right, guys.
So I've just blanked out on the kid's name, but from Stranger Things, it's the Biles. What's his first name? Isn't that Biles, the one who gets kidnapped in the first season? Who gets taken away? Who always has the bowl cut thing?
Oh yeah.
Will?
What is that?
Will.
What is that? Will. Yeah, Will Myers.
Yeah.
Is it Myers
Will
or
Myers?
Myers? It's the Will Myers haircut. That's what it is. It's the
Yeah.
Will Myers haircut.
I actually think it's more like a Mod Squad type mop haircut. But let's talk about the chase scene here, because at a certain point, Adar, he gets his hands on what we think is the evil sword, and he goes racing off on his horse. And Don Limmer is like, "That's the guy who's leading the army." And so Galadriel starts chasing him, and Halbrand sees Galadriel chase him and starts chasing after her. And so we have this big chase scene through the forest where Galadriel whispers to her horse and makes it go faster. And somehow Halbrand teleports in front of them and rides back and trips Adar's horse. But don't worry, guys, the horse is fine. He gets back up and he just fucks off.
Okay. Yeah.
But somehow Halbrand had to race past Galadriel and Adar, turn around, and then race back towards them. So he needed to get at least far enough ahead to get on a full gallop towards them. Again, how, Mark?
Fast travel. I keep telling you guys.
It's his vast knowledge of the Southlands. He knew a shortcut to get around and go past and come back at it.
Or he's Sauron and he's a sorcerer.
Ooh, I hope he's Sauron, because then you could ship him and Arendir, and then it'd be Saurondir.
Saurondir.
Yeah, it just really, I feel like that really just sounds good.
But I can't help but think, like, if you're in charge of making this show, and this scene comes to you in a script, how do you not question it? How?
I would love to let's invite the showrunners on here for next.
Are they going to have conventions for this show?
I mean, there are already Lord of the Rings conventions.
I mean, are we going to have the creators and producers up on the stage, and some fan just gets up to the podium and go, "Can you explain a few things for me? I got a list right here.
I have a novel actually of things.
Yeah.
Actually, explain to me.
So the sun sets in this direction. Could you explain how?
I know, right?
You need to fix a few things. I don't really quite understand how he can go from behind him to in front of him. And then...
So time works in 24 hours, and I'm just trying to figure out what time did they show, and what time is it in the village?
These guys will never answer any questions. They will never put themselves in a position where they have to answer questions like this.
Like they really do teleport characters around the map throughout this entire show, but this was the most egregious thing, because the fact that Halbrand got in front of them somehow and we didn't see it makes no sense at all.
Who do I need to tweet to ask that question?
I don't know.
I need somebody to tell me who to tweet to.
It's the one guy.
I'm gonna do it.
Look at Kadish's all his replies. You'll find the guy. But I bet he's not going to respond to you.
So after Adar falls off his horse, Halbrand goes up to him and he's about to kill him. And Galadriel's like, "No, you cannot quench thirst by drinking seawater." And he's like, "Oh, fuck, you're right. Okay, I'm going to let this guy go." And then Adar is like, "I killed Sauron." And Galadriel's like, "I'm going to kill you." And Halbrand's like, "No, you can't quench thirst by drinking seawater."
No, that's not quite right, though. Right? That's what happened. But right before that, Galadriel does some big sociopathic speech about how she's a genocidal racist.
She's going to leave him alive.
She's going to leave him alive.
Yeah.
As long as it takes. Even it takes me all age to murder every single one of the. And that's another subject. Is they're trying to kind of make orcs occupy this gray area. And assuming that they do, that they're just looking for a home and that they've been enslaved and it's not their fault, they're a victim of Morgoth. And Galadriel this scene sets her up as really a genocidal racist. I don't care, you're not worthy of life just because it.
But it was also funny because she was threatening him, "I'm going to keep you alive so you can destroy everything you love." And then she's like, "I'm going to kill you."
And now I'm going to kill you. Hey, women, am I right?
I feel like, once again, my favorite character of a show is the bad guy. Adar is my favorite character in this show.
Yeah.
Don't ask me
he's
why.
A cool character.
He's cool. They give him an actual really interesting and cool backstory during that conversation with Galadriel, right? I mean, the dude's had a rough existence, and I almost had a little bit of empathy for him, and
Yeah.
I kind of understand what his deal is now.
Yeah, I think
I guess kudos to the writers for that, but that's it. That's the only thing that I actually liked about this episode was Adar's little bit of setup and story here. It's very, very biblical, right, Odin? I kind of feel like there was kind of a Lucifer kind of parallel kind of thing going on. He used to be in the light and he got taken away, and now he's like serving the Dark Lord. He used to be one. It's just
and showing the visible corruption,
right? And maybe that's why I kind of like Adar a little bit now at this point. But
yeah,
it's not a lot of like. It's just I at least feel like they fleshed him out a little bit. So
he is also he's a trans hero. I don't know if y'all recognize that.
What?
A trans hero. Remember he is Adar. He's misraced, right? He's misgendered. He's called a certain thing, and he's like, we prefer Uruk.
I didn't even catch that. Oh my god!
Oh, I did immediately when I was like, wait a minute, hold on.
That was a very, hey, that's our word. It's okay if we use it moment.
Yeah, I
will tell you if you notice.
I didn't catch that. I didn't catch it. It wasn't as in your face as like the Discovery episode where where they just lectured us about using pronouns.
Yeah.
So
Well, subtlety is kind of
I didn't get it.
Did you also appreciate at the beginning of his speech, his big intro speech, where his brothers and sisters?
Oh yeah.
That's right, Sister Orcs. Very inclusive. But yeah,
I didn't know there were female orcs.
I don't think there are. I think they just put that in there.
It's
Which is
kinda
actually
like
not misogynistic, because it means that only the male elves that were corrupted, and the women weren't. So that's a positive thing.
Well, that was kind of like a Kamala Harris. We're using all the manpower and woman power we have in this crisis moment.
A woman.
Yeah. What's funny is I'm so desensitized to this stuff, Odin. I didn't even catch. Those two things. Like, I caught them and I was like, oh, that was weird. Then like I just moved on.
Yeah.
But you pointing that out, it's like that's right. It's like we prefer Uruk.
Yeah.
So
like on Adar's Twitter account, he has like Uruk.
Right. You guys are just like, I finally find a character I kind of like, and you guys just ruin it.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I ruined it for you. But
all right.
That's actually a perfect way to describe it, though. On Twitter, his bio has
preferred race pronouns on it.
Preferred race pronoun is Uruk.
Uruk. Yeah.
Call me either Adar or Uruk.
And he's got blue hair and thick frame glasses.
Although Adar does mean father, so that is a little bit kind of.
I'm assuming that has the Uruk is something to do with the Uruk-hai orcs in Lord of the Rings, right?
Yeah,
it's a variation.
Right. Like one of the reasons that they could be out in the sun, the Uruk-hai, is because they're part dark elf, I think.
Right. Okay.
Type thing. But so like we had this interesting scene between Galadriel and Adar, because he is giving us some backstory on like what happened after Sauron fucked off to do experiments in the unseen world, and how he turned against him because he was sacrificing members of his flock to his experiments, and he claims that he killed Sauron. And Galadriel is not too happy about this. What did you guys think of this interrogation scene, just in general? Odin, you got any thoughts on it?
Just that I got triggered when she called him by the wrong pronoun, and he corrected her, and then later in the scene she uses it again. She is actually. We think that she's the good guy. No, she's the bad guy in this, because she did not respect what he wanted to be called.
She's a turf, right? She's like J.K.
Trans exclusionary, absolutely. And we were talking about this last night on Friday Nights, but the Dutch angles, gotta love those Dutch angles. Every single one of those frames, you'll notice, is askew.
Yeah, it was like
Dutch
Battlefield
angle.
Earth.
Really?
It was great.
Yep. And it's like, wait, even on the close-up, you're gonna have it Dutch? What are you doing? Are you just at a film school and are like, I can do Dutch angles now?
Literally, yes. Yes. That's probably exactly right.
Like that kind of thing?
Yeah. A Dutch angle is basically when like it's just like slightly
Yep, there it is.
Off, yeah.
That entire sequence, every single shot is ink, ink.
Yeah, if you guys ever want a masterclass in Dutch angles, watch Battlefield Earth. That entire movie is shot in Dutch angle, which is bizarre. Mark, what did you think of the interrogation scene and the backstory we got to Sauron?
Oh, I do think if it's legitimate, it truly does paint Galadriel as a genocidal racist, because you can't humanize. Obviously, is not exactly the right word, but you can't
Empathize.
you can't make the orcs empathetic, right? They have to be the embodiment of evil, or else there are lots of questions like, wait, you're just going to kill them because? But Adar makes this entire plea like, aren't we worthy of life? Don't we have a heart? Like, it's effective. I agree with Matt Vader. It's effective at empathizing, and again, humanizing the race of what's supposed to be just the obvious bad guys. But if you make it so, well, they're bad because they're just ugly and gross looking, but they only want a home. They're just looking, they're out of slavery. They just want a place of their own. I mean, it's not fair. And all of a sudden you're like, wait, who's the good guy in this scene?
Yeah.
Galadriel, who's just like, nah, F you. I'm going to just kill all of you because you exist. Wait, shoot. If we take all of this at face value, then I don't know who the good guy or the bad guy is exactly. So it's people. There was a comment here in the chat. It's Hollywood it's not that they understand moral ambiguity and they want to present that. It's they don't understand the difference between good and evil like Tolkien did. They don't have they're not approaching this material from a worldview like Tolkien's that says there is good and there is evil and they're distinct and we can tell a difference. These guys live in this kind of gray, muddy moral morass where the compass is just kind of spinning all over the place, and so they can't write it because they don't understand it. And that's not a criticism of this show in general. It's a criticism of the last 2 decades of Hollywood. It was just bizarre to me, but the mood swings, and I guess that's women for you. Am I right?
Oh,
I'm not gonna kill you. You're gonna live for an entire age where I kill your kids. I'm gonna say one thing to you. No, I'm gonna kill you. Wait, what? I don't know. It's just kind of bad writing all around. Yeah. And I do think I like Adar and Elendil, and I wish if there was a show with Elendil and Adar and orcs, and you could construct something from it. But they're not in a show that has enough redeeming qualities to make it worth watching.
I think villains are just more interesting.
And Vader, I wanted to ask you about this because Adar kind of, in a way, justifies Sauron by saying he wants to bring order to this chaotic world, and so he in a way he justifies Sauron's existence, but at the same time the orcs and the Uruk are supposed to be servants of Sauron, which means that basically it's justified. Galadriel is basically justified in wanting to wipe them all out because they don't have free will. They're actually like slaves to Sauron. What did you think of the kind of explanation that Sauron's not actually a bad guy; he's just misunderstood?
Are they trying to make a parallel to somebody in the real world, or am I just reading too much into it after you just said that?
Oh, who do you think?
Is DeSantis Sauron? Is Trump Sauron? Are we a bunch of orcs because we might vote for them guys or something? Or it's I don't know where. I don't really know what.
I would say no, it's not, because they wouldn't then present them as trying to humanize them. They wouldn't be trying to humanize them in that case.
I think Matt's trying to get me to go into some weird philosophical region that I'm incapable of doing. He likes to ask me philosophical questions that I'm not going to answer.
What is being, Matt? Can you tell me that?
I can't. What does he think? What do you think of Sauron's emotional state when he decided to go about this?
What's the difference between Dutch angles and Dutch ovens?
Yes.
If one doesn't have free will, do they exist?
How do orcs
I
exist?
exist?
I'm trying to figure out how they make orcs. Because they don't have. If there's no female orcs, where do orcs come from?
Eggs.
I don't get it.
What
It's
came
eggs.
first, the egg or the orc?
That's
So
what
I
I think
believe-
about. It's like, huh? There's no female orcs? What?
I believe the orcs were like created by Morgoth. So like he took like elves and humans and stuff and twisted them into what became orcs. If I'm
Aren't they from?
remembering my
Is it just the
Tolkien correctly.
Uruk-hai that come from the ground, or do orcs also come from the ground too? Like, because I know that was a thing that they showed in the Lord of the Rings movies. Like,
I
What
think
about
they're-
goblins?
I think the Uruk-hai are specifically created by kind of entombing them in the earth so that they
Yeah.
can be like corrupted or something like that. I don't
Yeah.
really remember.
I'm sure it's actually explained by Tolkien, whereas here it's going to be just accept the fact that now we have a bunch of orcs.
Well, now we know that there are fem orcs and fem goblins, so
Yeah.
we can just assume that they fuck and have baby orcs
Wow.
and stuff like that.
Imagine that home conversation. Hey, honey, how was work today? Oh, kept
Dug
going
a
with-
trench. Yeah.
dug up the ditch and trench, and
Yeah, cut down a few trees and slaved a couple elves. typical day.
You wouldn't believe what this elf did today. It was really weird. It's like we were gonna make him cut the tree down, but then he went up to it and put his hand on it and talked
it was
to the
alive.
tree. It was very strange. And then he just then he beat the crap out of it after he thanked him for his logs. It's like-
I feel like we have a bunch
very
of
weird.
side stories with like the wives of the orcs holding down like the camp. And like they come home and they have like stew ready for them and like, how was
Yeah.
your day, honey? You need to take out the trash tonight. You know, there's like a whole like other series, spinoff series.
it's like a Star Wars holiday special version where it's like you have the Wookiees and it's like, oh yeah, let's see them in general, generic home life.
I would so much rather see that than this solo style. I don't know why they do this, but did you guys ever think about where did Mount Doom come from? Where did Mithril come from? Where did Han Solo get his last name? Fans
I tell
want to
ya.
know.
Next
We
next
don't
week-
want to know. We don't
next week on Ugzig, the animated series, we go to his home and meet his wife and kids. Yeah.
So Odin, you got me thinking. Like when Adar
Yeah.
does his speech about our brothers and sisters, I'm wondering, is it just like male orcs who identify as female orcs, and so like he has to be inclusive there, where there aren't actually female orcs? There's just
Yeah,
like a
maybe
couple of
is
them
it that there's just feminine orcs? What does a feminine orc even look like? Because I thought that most of them were supposed to be like. I think it's actually orcs are supposed to. I thought they were supposed to be a commentary on hypermasculinity, right? Hypermasculinity and the evil of hypermasculinity. So to say, men and women and ladies and gentlemen, it's like, wait a minute, what are you trying to imply? But also the whole thing also starts to make you think about other things too, because it's like brothers and sisters. You're like. So what are you trying to say, that there's a binary amongst the orcs? Mr. Guy who's going to complain about not being called Uruk?
So
Just saying.
before we get to the climax of this episode,
That's
we
why
kind
he's the
of
real villain.
we kind of skipped over the Slim Shady squad in episode 5 that just shows up out of nowhere. Do you guys have any thoughts on that group?
Forgot all about him.
They look like the most high. So imagine 3 girls who aren't that popular, but they're in the thespian club in a high school, and they decided to cosplay at Rinfest with their own original designs.
There you go.
And then they show up and they have backstories. One of them has like a silver tray that she took from her mom's house. And like, this is my special mirror. And one of them made like a little helmet out of cardboard, and they're real proud, except they're just not that, and you see they have potential maybe one day to really do this well, but I don't care about them. I have no interest in seeing what their deal
Well,
is.
you know what's
at
funny,
all.
Odin, like the one Eminem lookalike who's like there tracking things. Before the show premiered, there were like a lot of stills of that actor
Yeah.
out there, and people on Twitter were saying that's actually a dude, but it's not, because the character has boobs.
Breast, yes.
So it's an actual woman who's playing that role. So not even the people defending the look of the show knew for a fact that was
That's actually on point,
not a
though.
guy.
because the people defending it are showing that they have no idea what they're talking about, and that's what we could have all deduced from beforehand. Because people who tend to make those types of arguments and those types of defenses tend to not have all of the facts or don't care about the facts. That's why they get triggered if you even just mention that just hateful expression of facts don't care about your feelings, right? Because they're like, you're quoting somebody I don't like, and but they're showing it, that they're proving themselves, as you just said, to not even know about anything that they are defending, which is another reason why in the world are these massive corporations like Amazon trying to placate to these people who don't even watch it. They clearly don't watch it. Don't actually look into it. Don't care. And yet they are placating to them because they're seemingly the majority, though they're probably mostly bots.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting, Huff, from a narrative point of view. So we've seen the elf-human romance many times in Tolkien, right? But we've never had an orc-human romance.
That's true. Hopefully this changes that.
There are half
in a big
orcs
way.
in Dungeons and Dragons.
Although I will say we do not see, so there are notable human elf romances in Tolkien. There are not a lot of them. There are specifically 3 of them, right? And so for this one to have 2, because Halbrand and Galadriel totally like each other, you could tell they had to talk.
She's supposed to be
really
married
going to that
at this
well.
point.
She is supposed to be married to Celeborn, who, a woman just needs a good man, because look at the difference. This is her single, and then we see how she is married. So I mean, she got tamed, and she's so much better for it.
This is her pre-domestication.
Yeah, this shows.
Well, isn't Sauron technically an elf? Isn't he an elf?
I thought it was just that he was a sorcerer.
I think he is. I think he's a Maiar, because Morgoth was a super powerful Maiar, like the Balrog. Maiar is just kind of Tom Bombadil's a Maiar. All the wizards
I'm pretty
are Maiar.
sure he's an elf of some type.
Is he? Well, hold on. Let me Google it.
So while you're googling that, let's talk about let's talk about the big reveal in this episode, which is the ditch had a purpose.
Yes.
The ditch actually had a purpose. So
Yes.
basically, we get the evil human Waldreg, who uses the evil sword that Adar switched with him to unlock the floodgates of the Watchtower and send a flood of water into the trenches the orcs were digging into an underground lava river, creating Mount Doom and an explosion that rocks the Southlands in a huge cliffhanger. Now, despite myself, I actually really liked this scene. I thought it was really cool. It looked
it was cool.
Great. The music, the build up, the sudden twist where it's like, oh, the Numenoreans won. It's like, no, they didn't. And Adar's kind of like, sly smile that like, my plan's coming together. But I'm not quite sure if volcanoes work this way. Like, if you just dump a bunch of water in it, does it suddenly like erupt in a massive explosion? I know that the director of the pilot did Jurassic Park or Jurassic World 2, which also didn't have realistic volcano physics in it. So I guess it's just par for the course. But I want to hear what you guys thought of this revelation and whether or not it works. Mark, I'm going to go to you last because I know you have a lot to say about it. But Matt Vader, what did you think of the ending of this episode?
Well, I was really happy that the ditch had a purpose. That was pretty interesting to me. But its purpose turning out what it was ridiculous. I have always kind of wanted to see the origin of Mount Doom, right? I mean, that's kind of cool, I guess.
Mount Doom gets an origin story, yeah.
Yeah, which is more than most of the characters on this show. But
yeah, the elves can see land from like 500 miles away, but they couldn't see that ditch.
The biggest issue I have, being the Science Channel nerd that I am, is the very end when Mount Doom erupts and that pyroclastic flow literally destroys everything, creating a Mordor, I guess, basically, right? Nothing is living through this. Everything is dead. Not a plant, not a cockroach, nothing. They're all dead, but yet we know none of them are dead. Okay, they all have to live. It is the most preposterous, ridiculous thing I think I have seen on this show. I mean, I can suspend disbelief for fantastical wizardry, spells, and a lot of things, but there's two things: you don't live through tsunamis, and you don't live through pyroclastic flows like that. It just doesn't happen, and it really took me out of it. It kind of pissed me off. You know what I'm saying? It's like, because you see the previews, and you just see Galadriel get up. She's dirty. She's got some stuff in her hair. She's got some dirt on her face. Nothing lives through this, and I'm really curious what they're going to do here. And but in my mind, they're all dead. They all have to die. It's like Mount Vesuvius, or it's like where they're all like,
what is it? Vesuvius.
Yeah, where they're all like
Vesuvius.
statues, encased in their death throes.
Yes.
They're all dead. They can't live, but they will, and it's infuriating. So,
yeah.
Odin, what's your thoughts on the big reveal of the trench's purpose and how Mount Doom got its origin story?
Well, I love, again, just the planning that goes into this, because the fact that they were able to build a key that was able to unlock a series of chain events that all leads to, of course, with a ditch. Ditch was needed in order to direct this water further. So they thought the plan out, but they didn't think it out fully until it was time. That's when they were going to actually take care of it. But there's two things that I thought of when I saw this sequence fold out. It was like, one, okay, so I can tell the writers of the show played a lot of Mousetrap when they were younger. Because that's what it felt like. It was like, it's like Mousetrap, because this thing, it goes down, and then that releases this lever, and then that has this, and then the water goes here, then it goes down this hole, and then boom, volcano. So that was the first thing I noticed. And the second thing I noticed was, okay, how does the water fall into the volcano? Through the open hole. So even if you were going to try and argue saying, well, when water meets this and you pressure, okay, you could argue that, but not when there's a massive hole that you need for the water to fall into in the first place, because guess what? All that pressure going right out that hole that you've already established. And so apparently not only did Jeff, right, have to die, because he was in the way of the trench, but apparently Jeff was super fuel, and Jeff, because of his now introduction, because he gets swept away. They show the remnants of Jeff get swept away in the water. Because of his introduction into the volcano, Jeff is why Mordor exists. There we go. It all comes back to Jeff.
All right.
It makes a lot of sense when you say it like that.
So Mark,
Exactly.
before you get into the volcano physics, I want to know, why did they have to work so hard to get this key if they just needed to destroy the dam that was holding the water back? But more than that, why was this built into the elves' fortifications to begin with? Were some of the elves evil and wanted this to happen? Like, how did this come about?
And I hadn't even thought about that part yet.
A wizard did it.
A wizard.
Whenever you have questions like that, just a wizard did it.
Magic.
You see. Yes, it was magic. This is a magical world. None of it makes sense. It's things that we don't need an origin story for, and overcomplicated answers that aren't satisfying, because once they're given, you think about it and you're like, wait, what? So this whole plan is completely dependent on a bunch of orcs digging a bunch of tunnels how did the orcs know what this thing needed? And it was what? And it makes the water go to what is happening right now. And so you're supposed to think it's like this big, compelling spectacle, but it's not, because it doesn't make any sense. Not a single aspect of it makes sense, and as a whole, it doesn't make sense. But I don't know. I can't make a wizard.
All right. So tell us about the volcano.
Well, let me tell you. Let me read you something from the. So the problem with the volcano is that and we're going to ignore the entire, supposed phenomenon of and the water hits the lava and boom goes the volcano. Because maybe, and I need you to think about this, it might have been vinegar and baking soda. You don't know that dam was full of water. It could have been full of vinegar. And everyone knows
Was Jeff the baking soda?
Jeff might have been the baking soda. You don't know what trees are made of. Nobody knows what trees are made of. Also, Sauron was a Maiar. So the problem with using volcanoes is volcanoes are not magic volcanoes are real, and everyone has seen pictures of the aftermath of Pompeii and Mount Vesuvius and Mount St. Helens, and everyone has a real world understanding of what volcanoes do. And yeah, J.A. Bayona did Fallen Kingdom and got some criticism for the way he depicted volcano in that one, but that was nowhere near as egregious as this. Just from the U.S. Geological Survey, for people who don't know about pyroclastic flows, a pyroclastic flow is a hot, typically greater than 1500 degrees Fahrenheit, chaotic mixture of rock fragments, gas, and ash that travels rapidly, tens of meters per second, away from a volcanic vent or collapsing flow front. Pyroclastic flows can be extremely destructive and deadly because of their high temperature and mobility. For example, it destroys a bunch of cities. But a pyroclastic flow, is very, very well depicted at the end of the show, does create Mordor. That actually would be a way that you could turn, a janky farmland region into a volcanic dead hellscape. But the problem is you put almost all of your main characters for the show right there. And by the way, I saw another guy, a guy on Twitter post screenshots earlier that the volcano does move. It's way, way, way blued out in the distance on an earlier episode, and it has shifted up by multiple miles. So that's one thing I need everyone to remember about volcanoes is they will sneak up on you. And that's just geology. But a pyroclastic flow is massively destructive. It does not turn everything red. It does not get ash on your armor. Everyone in that village, which is the majority of our main characters for the show, like Matt said, they're dead. They're unequivocally dead. There's no surviving it. There's no shelter you can take. Mordor was created, and everybody around is definitely dead. So this is actually a great place to end the show. So
I agree.
My suggestion is we all just pretend that and that Galadriel is just, they probably have a bunch of elves with the same name. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the Galadriel we know is actually a different Galadriel.
You want to hear my theory as to how this came about? I think that the writers of this show watched Chernobyl on HBO and got to the part where they said, oh, if that superheated nuclear material falls into the underground river, it's going to create basically an explosion that's going to wipe out a third of the planet. And I think they were like, oh, that's how that geology works. And so they're like, if we can create enough superheated material that water would hit, then the resulting steam will create the volcano and destroy everything. I think that's the amount of research they did into the creation of an explosion like this.
The only problem with your theory there, Matt, is that Chernobyl is actually a really good show. So,
and also that the underground river probably is actually underground and would have had the ability for pressure to have been built up to create said explosion. Whereas in this show, they literally show you the massive sky opening where the water is falling in and where all of the pressure could be released without there being an explosion.
So E. Clamus Thomason says that the Numenoreans are only mostly dead.
Ah, yes.
They're able to come back after that.
They're all dead.
Pyrostatic flow.
They're all dead. Nobody lived. They all
Curb
have
Your
to die.
Enthusiasm ending. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah. So you know what's funny is I've seen a lot of praise for this episode in the Twitterverse and online and stuff like that, with people saying like, "Oh, it was amazing. It was such a surprising cliffhanger." What do you guys think of the shilling that's going on to try to convince people that this was actually a smart way to end the episode? Mark, why don't we start with you?
I think it's wish casting, and it's. I feel kind of sorry for that poor writer and everyone who thought they were probably doing a real good job. And somebody told them that you're doing a great job. This is amazing, right? And it's just not. So I kind of feel bad being so critical of it, but also we deserve more than this garbage. So I don't feel that bad. It's objectively bad. It's objectively bad taken as a whole. It's objectively bad taken in the context of the entire story, so much as there is. Every part of it is bad. Every single scene is bad. The things that they don't show are bad. It's almost all bad. So I guess everyone has their own opinions, and when it comes down to it, it's just $1 billion television show about a fantasy world. But I mean, I'm sure there's a little bit of this for you too. But I've got screenplays, I've got stories that I've written, and it sure would be nice to get $60 million to put it on film. So there's a little sour grapes, I'll admit that. But I just look at what is being churned out, and it's so substandard. And it could be so much better. This is just not the best they can do. It's just not.
Odin, if you turn your brain off and watch this show, it can be enjoyable. Like I really enjoyed the ending to this. Like it doesn't hold up upon scrutiny, but when I was initially watching, I was like, oh, that was cool. Like it looked really cool, and like I dug the build up to it. And so like as I go back and like rewatch episodes for this live stream, after I've accepted all the stupidity that is woven into these shows, I'm kind of like, you know what? If I don't think about it too much, I'm kind of having a good time watching it. Do you think that's indicative of this series as a whole, where they're just hoping that the audience is stupid and doesn't watch it too critically?
Yes, I think absolutely it is. And really, there's only two kinds of people, I think, on social media specifically that would have anything positive to say about the show. One, people who don't think who this show seems to be made for. And hey, there are some people who just will mindlessly, enjoy anything. And hey, that, you do you, boo, right? But it's still mindless, enjoyment. The other kind of person is not a person at all, but a bot. And I honestly believe that, the fact that there was positive praise even before this episode, and that there's still this positive praise going on, anytime social media is involved, I just don't buy it. I just don't buy that general sentiment, because we've seen way too many, just even in the entertainment space, let alone political space, things get changed, things get impacted because of, quote, Twitter and social media pressure. And the more that we get away from those, the more we realize, oh, most of that probably wasn't even real. Most of that was probably farmed out or fake in some way. And I just, that's, again, the only kinds of people that can truly say positive things about the show are people who either don't think or who are bots. So, yeah.
So, Vader, what did you think of the critical reception of this episode? It's been super, super high. I know that, like, publications like Forbes has been uncharacteristically critical of this show, but it seems like each episode that comes out, all the shill media kind of fall in line.
It's like I have some thoughts on this, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to explain what I'm feeling. I feel like Lord of the Rings, Tolkien in general, I feel is a more intellectually superior thing compared to most of the generic fantasy and other stuff of its ilk that has come after. I mean, it's all been based on Tolkien in one form or another, but Tolkien was smart about how he did all this stuff. I watched the Lord of the Rings movies. I watched the Peter Jackson movies. I never feel like they're treating us as a stupid and dumb consumer. You know what I'm saying? I feel like they're being faithful to his books. I read those books, and I've said this before. I had to read those books 3 times. I'd read a page, and I'd go, huh? And I had to read it again, because just Tolkien's works are so smart and crazy and kind of weird that you had to really think about what was going on. And this series, I feel, is kind of insulting to Lord of the Rings fans. I feel like Lord of the Rings fans should expect more. Am I making sense at all?
Yes.
I feel like it's stupid. I feel like it's Lord of the Rings for it's Lord of the Rings for
dummies.
For dummies, I guess. It's for the reality television crowd. It's just
for the TikTok generation.
It's Lord of the Rings for the TikTok generation. That's a really good analogy. And I don't like it. I want some smart TV here. I want things to make sense. I want it to ask us questions. I want us to be able to get a little philosophical with the stuff instead of just being breaking down how dumb it is and how stupid this show is, because I never once felt like I was a dummy when I was watching the Lord of the Rings show. Like they were treating us like that. And I feel like they're treating us like we're just stupid idiots. And I know I am a lot of times, but I do know what I like, and this isn't it, man. This is not hitting on any level with me, and it's really sad because they had such an opportunity here to make something cool. They're missing the boat hard. So
you would think Amazon would be like recruiting the best writers they possibly could in Hollywood to make this show, and you would think it would be prestige TV, and it doesn't feel like that. Like it looks great, but the actual storytelling is really poorly done. And this is kind of emblematic of a lot of first seasons where like the show's trying to figure out what it is and stuff like that. But with Lord of the Rings, you need to be on your A game from the beginning.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right, so let's go around, get final thoughts on this episode 5, and where everyone can find you. Mark Huffman, final thoughts on episodes 5 and 6, and where can people find you on the socials?
That's my Twitter account. It's been a lot of Lord of the Rings lately. I think my position has been very clear. I think this is a disappointment on pretty much every level, in a baffling sort of way that I just don't understand. Because I would have been pretty happy with this. Is okay. I'm not expecting it to meet. If it was Hobbit level quality, I'd be perfectly happy with that. But this is just it seems like it's aggressively bad. And the one thing I want to point out that we didn't talk about is when Theo unwraps that package and it's an axe. Did you guys think, wait, what? How did they not know that?
Yeah, did no one check?
It's wrapped,
especially Theo.
It's wrapped in a piece of cloth. Like, this is a sword hilt made of metal, and it's not the same. You wouldn't. What?
Yeah, you think Don Numenor would have peeked inside?
Yeah, even if they didn't look, they would have felt it and were like, "Wait a second, where's the? This is not. Wait a. Oh, you Adar, you scoundrel! You got me." I will say on my behalf, if you are interested in reading something besides Tolkien that is a compelling fantasy universe that has a lot of application of sophisticated grammatical themes and lexicography, can I suggest my children's books? The first one is called The Toot Fairy.
That reminds me, Mark. Matt Vader 74 needs your help writing a children's book.
Let's do it.
Matt, what was the name of your children's book?
Bertrand the Gassy Yard Gnome.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's right up my alley. Okay. This one's called Cheesemaker Durgsden. It's about cheese, but there's a twist there. It's going to make you uncomfortable. This one doesn't rhyme. It's called Bill and the Bard. It starts out, in a land far away, there was once a young bard with a problem. He found rhyming words to be difficult.
Mark, are you the new Dr. Seuss?
I am. Yes, that is accurate. This is called Bubbles, and it's called Bubbles. You see interconnected universe there. You see the toot. Whoa, the Toot Fairy.
Whoa,
the Toot Fairy is there, and it's called Bubbles because it's a mermaid with a gas problem, and everybody knows she has a gas problem, so she wants to become a human because her reasoning is, oh, if I'm human, nobody's going to know that I'm just farting all the time constantly because nobody can see the bubbles. And then the Toot Fairy has to come down and explain, that's not how it works, girlfriend. So there's some lessons learned. If you don't buy the books, which you should, because I will have to say they're the best thing that I've ever done. Google right now, if you will, Elijah Wood Toot Fairy. Don't let it do Tooth Fairy. You have to make sure it does Toot Fairy. and you will find a video, bringing it back to Lord of the
Yes.
Rings, of Elijah Wood reading the Toot Fairy on camera.
That's
And
cool.
you can see.
It's awesome.
Have you seen it, Odin?
Yeah, I remember you had sent it back when I like long ago when I was on,
probably
long ago when
long
I was
ago.
on Twitter. I remember
right.
you sending it, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, this is amazing."
It's good, right?
Yes.
Isn't it funny? It's funny. Anyway, please do that, because I would like to become as rich as the Queen. Okay? I'm just gonna say it. I want to be as rich as the Queen, because then I'll actually have money to fix some of this stuff, maybe. And I'm not gonna be able to do that unless you buy all my children's books multiple times. So, you know.
All right. So Odin, I owe you an apology. You know, we've
okay.
talked about misgendering and mispronouncing on
it's fine.
this live stream, but when I introduced you, I misintroduced you.
You dead named me.
I dead named you. I
Yeah.
said Odin's movie blog, but it's actually OMB Reviews now, which
Yes.
is technically has Odin's movie blog in the title, but
It does, and the intro I have
here, yeah.
still has Odin's movie blog too.
Yeah. But you're now going under.
I identify as OMB.
You identify
Reviews.
as OMB Reviews, yes. So
and actually, there's been a development. Now I identify as Lord Odin of Ardmore.
Okay. Can't keep up with all your identities, Odin.
I know.
But why don't you give us your final thoughts on episodes 5 and 6 and where people can actually find you?
Well, for episode 5, you could basically skip to the very end and watch those sales unfold, and you will have gotten your money's worth in the episode, because that's where all the money, I think, honestly went for that specific episode. And the most recent one with the volcano, it's like, okay, I feel like this is the biggest thing that they've done so far. It feels like this is what a lot of it has been building to, and yet you look back to the previous episodes, and there's been no real build-up for it in any real way that you would actually care about. So yeah, and it's completely illogical and just silly and stupid. So I'm glad that I look forward to watching it, only because I look forward to being able to talk about it with y'all, because I just feel that it's just so much more fun, and it's just funnier now when I go back. If I do have to go back and rewatch something or see a clip, I can just be like, oh, that's right, we talked about Jeff, we talked about the ditch, we talked about science and orcs and dead naming and all these other things that are just so much more entertaining than what we actually have in front of us. And as far as where you can find me, I'm on YouTube, Odyssey, Rumble, OMB Reviews, and I also have a Discord channel as well. And you can find links to that through my YouTube. And I do also have a locals community, so you can find OMB Reviews on locals and support me there.
Very nice. Rumble now owns locals, I believe. So they've
Integration now
going on there.
Yeah.
Matt Vader 74. Final thoughts on episodes 5 and 6, and where can people find more?
Oh, you know what? Nobody wants to hear my final thoughts on these shows. They're insulting to Tolkien fans. That's my final thoughts. And you can find me at Matt Vader 74 on the Twitter and all the other social medias that matter, I guess. And here at the Salty Nerd every Saturday morning, every Monday morning, and on all of these episodes we drop every week. So there you go.
All right. I want to give a special thank you to Joker Voice, Dennis Wright, and E. Clay Tomlinson for being our super chat donators for this episode. You guys are awesome. That generosity means a lot to the channel. Really helps us out. We wish we had more people like you. But this week, Matt Vader on the Salty Nerd podcast, we've got an interesting week ahead of us, because we're releasing our review of the Battlestar Galactica miniseries from the early 2000s.
Nice.
And we're reviewing RRR, the big Tollywood action movie coming out. And we're continuing our coverage of House of the Dragon, as well as C. So we've got a very busy week ahead of us. But next week is going to be Wormwood Week, where we kind of highlight this bizarre Australian zombie series all week. We interviewed the director and the leading actress and stuff like that. We go through both movies that are out currently. And if you guys have not been seeing Wormwood, definitely check it out. Odin, have you ever seen the Wormwood movies before?
I've never seen the Wormwood, but I have seen RRR, and it's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, we dive deep into RRR, and that's going to be coming out this Friday. But I want to thank my distinguished panel of nerds for sitting down and dumping salt all over the Rings of Power. tune in next Saturday as we do the exact same thing for episode 7. And hopefully we'll get even more stupidity that we can kind of like.
There can't be an episode 7. They're all dead. They're all dead.
It's
oh,
the
stop
aftermath.
using reason.
It's just the Harfoots.
It's the Harfoots for an hour.
Yeah, it's the Harfoots and the dwarves and elves.
And the dwarves and elves, yep.
Yeah.
And they're all
right,
gonna
everyone.
die too.
All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in, and join us next week as we do more Lord of the Rings coverage. And until next time, stay salty, my friends.